Happy to get you on the platform, my man. For the people that's not familiar with you, introduce yourself to the people.
My name is Bob Sumner. A lot of people call me the Star Maker. I helped build a show that kind of changed the color of comedy on television called Def Comedy Jam. And, from there, I've been able to take people from the outhouse to the penthouse.
Yes, indeed. So with that being said, break that down for me. Like, how did that come about? You being the creator of Def Comedy Jam.
I mean, it all started back here at this barbershop, man. I mean, seriously, I'm in Linden, New Jersey, directly across the street from Roselle, New Jersey. It's two yellow lines that separate us, and it's like it's called St. George's Avenue. We call it the Ave, you know. And I grew up in this barbershop next to a bar called the VT. You know what I mean? And that's where, like I say, I dropped out of daycare, but my education, man, was, it was like a combination of being next to the bar. So that's like that street education mixed with, it wasn't like my dad just took me out to not learn anything. He took me out and brought me down to the barber shop where he put me in the back, turned on the TV, and I watched a show called Romper Room. Okay, it was pre-Sesame Street. You know what I'm saying? So I was in there, getting my ABCs and all that. But at the same time, a lot of the guys that used to come in to get haircuts from my dad, who would come from the bar next door, they would, read the newspaper with me. You know what I mean? I was like into the sports section when I was 4 years old. I mean, word. And my cousin, he used to always trip off of it when he would come in from LA, because his dad, my uncle, was in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was the lead singer for a group called the Platters, So it kind of led me into entertainment. My brothers, they had a singing group, a band, and my mom worked at RCA Records. So I was into entertainment. And when I got, like I said, I was on the radio at Seton Hall University, and that led me into being a DJ, that led me into getting this job at Def Jam, and I was also doing comedy on the underground at a couple places, a place called Terminal D, Club 88. Then it was the Peppermint, where I had Bill Bellamy as my host, a young kid who was on the come up, along with, when Bill went to MTV, I replaced him with Mike Epps, So I was like always into this thing. And when I got my job at Def Jam, it was through like I was booking jazz bands and like that. And I got an opportunity to take what I was doing on the underground, and I got my job at Def Jam Records. And then Russell Simmons and Stan Lathan was getting ready to partner into a television film company. And I was right there to help create Def Comedy Jam.
How did y'all get started with Def Comedy Jam? Like, how did that come about?
All right. Def Comedy Jam basically got started when Russell and Stan, Russell Simmons, Stan Lathan, they decided that they were going to go into a partnership with a film and television company. And when they was trying to come up with different shows, they had one that ran for a minute called the New Music Report. And, it did whatever it did. But they were thinking about, doing something else. And, Stan is a legend in film and television, and especially like, with what he's done with Sanford and Son and stuff like that. And, Russell was one of them guys that, he pretty much used to go to a lot of comedy clubs and things like that. So he had a love for that. And Carmen Ashurst, who was working at Def Jam at the time, she was president of the company, and I was her assistant there. And she knew that I was doing comedy, on the underground in Jersey. And, they was talking about trying to do a stand-up comedy show. And you had, a couple comedy clubs like the Uptown in Harlem and a couple other places that was doing comedy, but nobody had really brought it to television. And, with me being right there at Def Jam Records and doing what I was doing over in Jersey, it was only right for me to get the ball and, take it to the hole. You know what I'm saying? And I had this opportunity to put together the show because I was working with a young man by the name of Bill Bellamy at the time. And that's kind of like how I found out about getting that job at Def Jam, because Carmen, we was doing a show up in upstate New York, and she takes out this card because she was liking Bill, and I was like, damn, when I get back home, I'm gonna call her to see if he can open up for some of the Rush artists that was signed to the management and to Def Jam Records, and she told me that she had got a promotion to president, and she was looking for an assistant. And I told her I would take that job. She thought I was just some dude at a jazz club booking bands and stuff, but I was actually looking for some benefits. You know what I'm saying? So at that time, I got that job, and then Stan used to call the office all the time, and for whatever reason, we got to be kind of cool. And he came through one day, and I went in there and sat down with him and Russell and, started telling them about what I was doing over in Jersey. And I had a lot of connections because, I had Bill, I was working Bill like he was a big star back then. We was doing like the Apollo comedy, not the comedy club, but we was doing the Showtime at the Apollo and stuff like that. So I got an opportunity to meet other comedians that I knew was pretty good. So that's how I did a pilot. I did a pilot for HBO. After taking HBO, I took HBO execs over to the Uptown so they can see the energy of black comedy. And they was like blown away. So now they decide that they want me to put together a showcase. So there was a place in New York called Sweetwater's. And I called a couple comedians that I had, already met, and had them come through and showcase for the HBO execs. And Bernie Mac was one of them. Dale Givens, Bill Bellamy, this other comedian, Reggie McFadden, Chris Rock came through. He did some time, and they were like kind of blown away. And HBO gave me a pilot, which consisted of 2 shows. And at the end of the day, those 2 shows turned into 104 shows, and I was able to just like all of the comedians that you saw on Def Comedy Jam, I flew all over the country, like pretty much like a basketball, football scout, and just made it happen, made the magic happen.
And Robin Harris, he was supposed to be the original host, right?
Well, I mean, the whole thing with what Def Comedy Jam was supposed to be was, the comedy answer to what music was. And, Def Jam Rush, we was running the game in music, So if you're gonna do this thing and bring that element to comedy, I had to do my due diligence to the people that were making noise. And I didn't really have a relationship with Robin, but I knew about him. So, and I knew what was going on at the Comedy Act Theater out in LA. So Robin had started doing like Do the Right Thing, and he had Bebe's Kids and the house party and all that. Like Robin was that guy. You could tell that. And then, from what they were telling me about what he would do out there at the Comedy Act, he would be like the perfect person to have host this show with this ensemble of comedians that I was kind of like flying all over the country and had these relationships and was setting up for who knew what it was going to turn out to be. But while all that was going on, Robin passed away, man, and it kind of like threw a monkey wrench into, what the game plan was, because it was the host that was going to be the glue. And then I also had to find an announcer, as well as a DJ because, again, it's Def Jam. So you got to have the DJ. And let the truth be told, the reason I had to have a DJ is because I was the DJ in these underground clubs. And I didn't want, this comedy show to be just one of those bland shows where you have the piano player or you have the cymbal and the snare drum and stuff. So I put that element of DJing into comedy. And when it was time for me to do the Def Comedy Jam television show, we had been to at this time, LL had just come out with this album, Mama Said Knock You Out. And Babyface had this joint called This Is For The Cool. And they co-headlined the Budweiser Superfest over at Madison Square Garden. After the show, there was an after party on the West Side Highway at this club that used to have these old style cars and stuff. And in the club, I'm listening to the DJ killing it, but also he talking. And I'm like, I don't have to find an announcer if the DJ can do both. And that was the birth of Kid Capri. And it kind of like changed the game. And Russell and I, and Kid spoke about it on Kid and Play's joint about how he didn't really quite know what we were talking about. But at the end of the day, now everywhere you go, you gotta have a fucking DJ. You know what I mean? And that wasn't never really the plan like that, man. I think about how, I should have had some type of patent or something on that, because that's where it all came from. And Kid is world renowned now. A lot of people knew him in Harlem or in the Bronx, but now he became like, world renowned by Def Comedy Jam. Crazy. And the other part to it is, now what are we going to do in terms of finding the host? Okay, here it is. There's a show, I believe it was the Apollo, where at the time House Party was out and Living Color was out, and they were doing a tribute to Robin Harris. And on this show was this kid named Martin Lawrence. You know what I mean? With all them other Paul Mooney and all them on this show, but Martin just fit what we were looking for. And come to find out, Fox and HBO, they was already trying to figure a vehicle out for Martin, and that was the birth of Martin Lawrence and Kid Capri on Def Comedy Jam. And, everything else just did what it did,
Wow. So that's how that came about with Martin being the host.
Pretty much, man. He, Russell and Stan, they checked in with Eddie and Arsenio and them, like, who is this dude? Because basically all you knew him was the DJ and House Party with Kid and Play. You know what I mean? And I believe he might have had a half-hour HBO special, but it was nothing like what happened. You saw what happened to his career. You know what I mean?
Yeah, his career took off. But just out of curiosity, right? What was your reaction when you first found out that Robin Harris passed away?
It was, I mean, it was like, it was just like a wow. You know what I mean? Nobody saw it coming. And, again, nobody knew that he had that, situation with the, sleep apnea and all that. You know what I mean? So, I mean, he was on his way, bruh. He was on his way to superstardom. You know what I'm saying? And again, things happen. Because I could tell you this, and a lot of people don't know this, and I've heard him even mention it on some podcasts and stuff, but the first comedian that I had called when it was time for me to put this show together, Def Comedy Jam, know who it was?
Who was it?
TK Kirkland. You heard of TK Kirkland?
Oh, definitely. I had TK on the platform like 2 or 3 times already. Good dude,
Well,
man.
TK, man, was like the toast of the town. You know what I mean? He was like he's from Jersey, but he went to LA and he made a name for himself on the underground. And then he would come back to New York and New Jersey, and he would just like smoke stages. You know what I'm saying? So when it was time to do this pilot, TK was like my first call, but TK told me that he already had a situation going on and nobody knew what Def Comedy Jam was going to be. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, he decided that he was going to pass on us. And about time he was going to do it, you know, some other shit had gone down that didn't allow him to do the show. It's crazy. But he was that dude, man.
Wow. So TK, he was gonna be one of the hosts.
Well, he wasn't going to be the host, but he was definitely going to be like in that, you know how I had Bernie Mac in that position and Chris Tucker in those positions? You know, at that time, you know, those guys, they once they did that show, you could best to believe on Monday, all of the Hollywood casting agents was calling me, whether it was film or television. I mean, everybody was like, and everybody liked different people because the way I did Def Comedy Jam was very much how we did Def Jam Records. Nobody was the same. The Beasties wasn't third base. You know what I mean? LL, Slick Rick, you know, PE. Everybody was different over with us. And this same thing I did with Def Comedy Jam.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I think I seen TK speak on that before, man. But I want to backtrack to Bernie Mac, right? Because you brought him up earlier. What was the issue between him and Steve Harvey, if you don't mind me asking?
He asked me, did I have any idea what was going on with Steve Harvey and Bernie Mac? Well, I can say this to you. When I was dealing with them, it was before the Kings. They were princes, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? I saw the potential that they had, and I had already knew Steve from, you know, when I would take Bill over to Showtime at the Apollo. And Bernie was somebody who I met during a time when, back in the day when they had this music convention called Jack the Rapper. Okay? August the 5th, 1991 is when I first laid eyes on Bernie Mac. And it was at the Comedy Act Theater in Atlanta. They had one in LA, they had one in Atlanta. And Bernie like blew me away. I came back to the hotel and I called Bill Bellamy. I said, yo, we getting ready to have a hit show. I don't know what else, how it's gonna come about, but it's getting ready to be a monster. So Bernie and Steve was actually part of the pilot season. And Bernie and Steve, and this is the thing that people got to understand, that even though Def Comedy Jam was a new show with fresh faces, Bernie and Steve had already been in the game, okay? And they had already had that little rivalry going on before Def Comedy Jam. You hear me? Before Kings of Comedy and all that. So that was just like something that was happening. But I think that what really used to drive them nuts was when Steve started getting a couple dollars, right? Steve got turned on to this lady in Chicago by the name of Barbara Bates, who used to make these suits. And Bernie had already been down with her because she was from Chicago. You know what I'm saying? So now it used to be like, you know how they had the verses? They used to have the battle of the suits, man. You know? And I really feel that their rivalry, or whatever you want to call it, started more with their attire than anything else, man. You know, and it's crazy because they wasn't wearing suits at first. Bill Bellamy was the guy wearing the suits. I don't know if you remember that. You know, Bernie and Steve used to just like, you remember Bernie on the I Ain't Scared of You motherfucker show? He had on some jeans with his face on them and stuff, you know? And later on, when we went on tour, is when Bill used to wear suits. So Bernie started wearing suits, and then Steve started making some money, and he started getting them suits too. You know what I mean? It's crazy, man. The way I see it. You know, somebody else might tell the story a little different, but I was kind of in the trenches with a lot of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense when I think about it. Because when they did stand up, they both had the same style. They both wore suits. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy to hear. So they both was going at it over the suits.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and again, they were seasoned. They were seasoned where, the Chris Tuckers and the Chappelles, they were new. You know what I mean? They was new in the game.
But speaking of Steve Harvey, how you feel about Mark Curry accusing him of stealing his jokes?
Well, if that conversation, and maybe because social media wasn't around during those years, but as far as I'm concerned, those type of conversations should have happened 30 years ago when the went down. You know what I'm saying? To hear it now and knowing that, you know, there was a time when Mark was like that dude. You know what I mean? He was on top of all of them. You know, I mentioned something about half-hour specials. Martin and Mark was two of very few brothers who had specials on HBO back in the day. You know what I mean? So when I hear, him saying that, I everybody be stealing jokes, man. Do you know when I go all over the country, how many jokes I hear twice or 20 times? You know what I'm saying? It's like that. So it's a thing that it creates conversation. You could come up, I heard a dude recently on one of these shows talking about me, and how he didn't do Def Jam and all that type of stuff. I mean, at that time, you didn't have a jump shot. You know what I'm saying? It's just what it is, So that's where that is. When people start talking about stuff from way back, man, I'd be like, damn, I guess this is just, for press purposes. At the same time, I like to just like give everybody props for having great careers, man, because there's a lot of other folks that, was up and then they went down. You know what I mean? And a lot of it happens when your character's fucked up. You know what I mean? I don't care how talented you are. If you can't go into craft services or wardrobe or makeup, and act right, and you messing up the whole production. You know what I mean? The production goes everywhere. All of a sudden you go in there, the cook's leaving because you done went off on them. I can't bring that to my set.
Yeah, that's real talk. And the person you was referring to was Godfrey, right? Because I do remember him doing an interview with TK Kirkland where he was talking about why he never did Def Comedy Jam. And I think he made a comment saying that he felt like somebody was hating on him.
Again, you, you didn't do Def Comedy Jam because you didn't do Def Comedy Jam, but you might have did Comic View 7 times. You know what I'm saying? It was like, for me, when you came to Def Comedy Jam stage, I wanted you to make a difference so you could become a film or television star. And that's basically what used to happen with the show, where, you had the other shows where people was just throwing people shucking and jiving, this, that, and the other. And when I first saw that brother, he was part of a duo, like Rowan and Martin and all that, and it was kind of like, it wasn't what we was looking for at the time. But if you just be patient, your time would come. And during the time when he was kind of like, trying to get on, I had Dion Cole, I had Corey Holcomb, you know what I mean? I had Mike Epps. It was during that time, Craig Robinson. So you do the math, okay? You do the math. And the way I'm doing this, my man Jerry West just passed. And I used to say, I'm doing this like Jerry West. You know what I mean? I'm drafting a high school kid, number 13. You know what I mean? And then he's going to turn into one of the greatest that ever did it. That's basically what I've been able to do with Def Comedy Jam. So, if you want to bitch and all that and throw your middle finger up on these shows and have my publicist send me this and I don't even know that this is going on, don't do that. Just have a nice day. You know what I mean? Because let the truth be told, and I told you, I grew up in a space that don't allow to be disrespected like that. You know what I mean? And then me personally, and having this platform, people don't understand, like, those early years of me becoming whoever I was going to become got derailed in 2005, man. I was carjacked. You know what I mean? I got hit upside the head with a sort of shotgun. You know what I mean? And ski mask and stuff. You know, so I don't have no time for pre 2005 stuff. You know what I mean? So anything that you're saying right now, you know, you follow what I'm saying? It's like I went through a situation, man, that allows me now to be here, still alive, and be able to take people to the next level again. You know, and what people don't understand is I just come from Miami, Florida with the American Black Film Festival. My boy Jeff Friday and I, you know, along with my boy Bobby Duckett and Jeff Billingsley, man, I put together the right team. So after this pandemic, all of these superstar kings and queens of comedy in the past, all that is done. You know, I'm not into recycling. You see these shows now, it's the same people on these shows. Every show is the same recycling, or somebody was on social media with a bunch of views, but they're not really telling no jokes that you could turn into a sitcom or a movie. So me and my crew, right, and my nephew Reg and I, we've been rolling since he was 16, working on Def Comedy Jam. Like, I got a squad.
So when you say Godfrey, he didn't have a jump shot. What you mean by that? Because I'm sure the people are gonna want to know.
I love to, okay? Because what I meant by him not having a jump shot, okay, and being like, having like 30 years later, still letting you not being on Def Comedy Jam be like a sore spot with me. And then, you know, it's people that don't even know me, but you saying my name like I'm the one that f***ed up your dream. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, let's talk about this. So whenever people ask me, how do I go about selecting my talent? Okay, I always say, if I wasn't in the comedy business, I would have been in music or sports. Okay, so let's talk sports. Okay, when I'm flying around the country looking for talent, it's no different than what a scout does. Okay, so I'm going around and I'm looking at all these different comedians around, and then I'm trying to put 60 comedians on planes or whatever to get to New York City. So they become one of 48, okay? I tape 60 to get to 48, all right? I'm in all these different cities. So if I see 5 comedians that I like in Chicago and 2 in Detroit or whatever the case may be, I'm taking the 2 from Detroit, and then I'm gonna take the 3 from Chicago, okay? And then the other 2, hopefully you'll come back next year so you can make a difference. Like, there's a method to my madness, and that's why I say your jump shot, okay? Your jump shot, work on your jump shot a little bit more, and then you're a no-brainer next year. Don't start MFing me or whatever, because I'm gonna be in this game for a minute. So when I'm looking at you being hurt, you know, years later, but yet you're doing well, just keep it there. So it's kind of flattering that I'm still on your mind, but I'm not beat because I told you earlier where I'm from. You know what I mean? So kind of like chill when you kind of going hard on me, because, you know, I'm in my 60s now, but I have kids that's in their 30s, you know what I mean, that don't appreciate you talking about their daddy on Facebook like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's something that people have to, like, chill. And, you know, you don't have to apologize, but just chill, because it's not a good look, because you still have a sore spot because you don't have that credit. But again, you didn't have that jump shot, you know? And then when people would say they came to the Peppermint, some people, I don't even remember them being in the Peppermint, because at the Peppermint, you had to make a difference. You know what I mean? There was a lot of people that ran in and out of there. You know what I mean? I used to watch people sometimes get bottles and glasses thrown at them. Not because that's the type of place it was, but our people was into knowing that if you came in there, you better bring it. And some of these people that didn't make it to Def Jam, you know, that was it. Just like right now, I'm at the Apollo Theater. A lot of people are trying to get to the Apollo and they have to go through Willingboro, okay, where I have my host is Marshall Brandon and then one of my guys, Rashawn Reese, who's getting ready to be a major player in the game. And again, we just come from Miami at the ABFF, American Black Film Festival. I put 5 rising stars on stage that made people feel like it was the second coming of Def Comedy Jam. And that's why when I speak to club owners and all that, I say I could do you one better. Where club owners are telling me now they don't care about talent, all they care about is views, right? How many followers these people have. So why not how about I go and find a hot podcast, right? Who want to be just like how Def Comedy Jam presented Bernie Mac, Chris Rock, Chris Tucker, all these new fresh talents. Why can't the hot podcast be the one that take it around the country and then we do? See, I be thinking outside the box, fam. You know what I'm saying? And when I was talking to my boy Pookie, you know, my boy Pookie was like, he was right there. Naughty, the whole crew, they all was part of the fabric of what I was building in Newark and Orange, New Jersey, East Orange, New Jersey. You know, it's a method to our madness around here. And right now, all I'm doing is showing that it's a formula that I have. You know, nobody has done what I did with Def Comedy Jam besides the Kings of Comedy. You know, and the Kings of Comedy came from us. You know, they still owe me checks. You know what I'm saying? They still owe us checks. But that's a whole nother story. Whole nother story. But I'm here to talk about it. Never knew I would. Never knew I would, did you?
So let's talk about that, man. What was the issue between Def Comedy Jam and Kings of Comedy?
There was really never an issue besides the fact that, you know, some people word don't be bond. You heard me? Some people say word is bond and then they go right out the door and do some other shit, you know? And that's basically what happened there. We sat around the round table in Beverly Hills and we talked about what we were going to do and we left out of there and they went and made phone calls to each of the individuals because the individuals wasn't making no big money then, you know, and a couple of them had little TV shows and stuff, but everything really came from us. But at the end of the day, we got a check for a couple months. And then that check, I guess they decided that, you know, it was whatever it is. So I'm good with that. But let the truth be told, when you look at what the Kings of Comedy was and the Queens of Comedy, it wasn't nothing but Def Comedy Jam reunions. First time you ever saw any of them was where? You know what I mean? So, you know, it is what it is. I mean, a couple of them started hosting on BET, but they didn't get there until you saw them at Def Jam first. You know what I mean?
Right. So y'all got backdoored pretty much.
Backdoored us. Yeah, backdoored us. But that's what happens. Ain't that what happens sometimes? And the thing is, then they talk about it later on how they, you know, they got f***ed or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? And it's like, all right. But again, I'm here in 2024 with the Rising Stars of Comedy to show everybody that this thing ain't about packing the house with Instagram stars and all that stuff. It's about, it's time to make Fridays again. It's time to make house parties again with real talent. You know what I mean? And I think I've done a good job finding talent over the years. You know, I just saw someone in Austin, Texas, Saturday night who said he'd been in the game 20 years. And sometimes it takes that long for me to find you. But at this point in time, you want to hear about him. I'm going to come back and tell you that was him. You know what I mean?
I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. So y'all had a meeting with the producers at Kings of Comedy, pitching the ideal, and they went behind y'all back and got the comedians and did Kings of Comedy without y'all.
They wasn't even from the Kings of Comedy. They was people who worked with us on the Def Jam tours. You know what I mean? That's what I said. People, they was part of we was a family. Everybody was supposed to be on the same team. And then all of a sudden, and the comedians, you can't knock the comedians. They don't owe us. Just like I watched a documentary at the film festival because they're funny. There's a comedy festival that we've been doing as part of the ABFF, and they premiered this film that was done in DC called The Mecca of Comedy. And there's a comedian on there talking about Def Jam didn't do anything for comedy. It was like, huh? Talking about we wasn't paying nobody. We was paying what Afterpay. You know, it was favorite nation scale. And now you take your record. It's just like you make a record. You make a hit record and you gonna work forever. You know what I mean? Or if you think it's all about you, you might not work forever because, again, what I speak on, talent and character. Character comes first, you know? So it's like I'm never going to make everybody happy. But ask me if I give right? Should I? I don't know nobody nothing. But every time I could take somebody from the outhouse to the penthouse, it's a beautiful thing, and it's more of them than not. You know, them people, remember the Muppets at the opera, and they be up in the opera with their hand, they're not enjoying the music. You know what I mean? You know, it is what it is.
So I want to ask you, right? You know, you being the co-creator of Def Comedy Jam, I can only imagine all the comedians that, you know, you met and worked with. So I want to ask you about some comedians and have you speak on them. Charlie Barnett. How was it like working with him?
One of my best, man. I've known Charlie Barnett since I was a student at Seton Hall University. Maybe even before that, when we used to just go over and wild out in Greenwich Village, because Charlie would be on the on the stoop. He'll jump up on a garbage can, and he would just like bring comedy, make people feel good. Charlie Barnett would have, if Charlie didn't have those demons, he could have been Eddie Murphy. Seriously. He used to come to my house sometimes out in Jersey. If I would have him play one of my clubs, I'd let him take a shower at my crib. You know what I mean? That type of stuff. Like, I love Charlie Barnett, you know, and Charlie had, you know, he was in, what was that, Miami Vice, DC Cab. You know, Charlie had opportunities, but the demons used to get to my man, you know. But I have a comedian right now that I'm working with by the name of Rio Paris, who I saw at a showcase a couple years ago down in Tampa, Florida. And he's like Charlie Barnett 3.0. You're going to see him along with Rashawn Reese and Mason King. And I have two comedians right now working with D. Ray Davis tonight at the Improv. Apple Brown Betty is her name. She's like Cheryl Underwood, Adele Givens. But, you know, in today's world, you know what I mean? And then I have Anthony Oakes, who there's a big buzz on him right now. You know, and he just had a hell of a Pride Month. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's what it is.
When you say demons, what you mean by that? Like, what was he dealing with? Because I mean, he died out of nowhere, so you know, it's still a mystery behind his death. You know.
Well, no, I mean, just that. I mean, no, it was basically, you know, an addiction is an addiction, and if you don't want to get help, you're just gonna stay there, no matter how talented you are. You know, you look at the jazz artists back in the day, a lot of them would still be here if that smack didn't get them. You know what I'm saying? So when I speak on demons, I'm speaking on, you know, the white horse. You know what I mean?
So he was on cocaine.
Yeah. Or whatever it was going to be that night. You know?
And he was on Def Comedy Jam too. Like, how was that? Like, how did you get him on the show?
It was a no-brainer to put Charlie Barnett on Def Comedy Jam because he earned it. There was a thing where Def Comedy Jam, a lot of people thought that everybody had to be like somebody new who nobody ever saw or whatever, whatever. But I had to pay homage to the people who I grew up on. And like I said, Charlie Barnett was definitely one that I grew up on as a older teenager or whatever the case may be. But even, with Def Comedy Jam, I had Wild Man Steve, I had Dolomite, I had Rodney Winfield, I had Ronaldo Ray. It was very important for me. Of course, Paul Mooney. It is very important for me to pay homage to those guys. And having Charlie Barnett on there was like, nobody ever saw Charlie Barnett doing stand-up on TV. You know what I mean? So it was like, it was like one of those, when I never forget telling Charlie and his boy, Charlie, his boy, I'm gonna put him on television. They was like, are you kidding me? And I was like, hey man, yes, I'm putting him on. And the rest was history. It was a wild day though, because Charlie ran in the audience, and did you see what he did? Did they edit that?
Yeah, they showed that him splashing the water in the audience.
Yeah, and he ran in the audience, and ladies' pearl ring or something jewelry. That was a hell of a time, to be honest with you, because nobody knew Charlie was gonna like wild out like that. And everybody looking at me, I'm like, I ain't know,
Damn, so it got serious after that.
Well, not just that, but we used to kind of like, before the show, we kind of knew who Martin was going to, talk to. Like when the young lady, and it's so funny, I have this celebrity softball game every year for cancer. And some lady came up to me with this bag, right? And she goes in her bag and she pulls out this yellow outfit, right? She said, you remember this? And I looked, and it was, remember when Martin said, big birds here?
Yeah, I remember that.
On Def, it was her. She still got the outfit 30 years later. That was like her claim to fame. And what we used to do is, sit people in certain places. But with Charlie, we wouldn't know that he was going to go over there to that lady and squirt that stuff, that water like that. But when she started doing that, again, I mean, a very expensive piece of jewelry. And that was someone who was like somebody who invested into the business. Like it was somebody that Rush was doing business with. So that was a real ill time, but it happened.
Wow. But out of respectfully, I want to ask you this. Did you know he had full-blown AIDS at that point?
Yeah, I knew Charlie was sick. Yeah, I knew Charlie was sick. I mean, I knew he was going through it, in terms of to what level. I mean, because he was still active. You know what I mean? He was still active. So, yeah.
Damn, man, I hate to hear that. So you knew that whole time that he was sick.
I mean, and again, that was part of why, I was really trying to be in Charlie's corner. I was in Charlie's corner all the way through.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, man. Was he down about it, or did he accept what it was?
Nah, it was cool. He knew what it was. He knew how it all, it was just a moment in time, man. But big up to him, man, because he made a lot of people smile.
Yes, indeed. R.I.P. to him, a hell of a comedian. But I want to ask you about Cedric the Entertainer. How was that like working with him?
Cedric is someone who is everything that his name calls. He's the entertainer, and it wasn't even about him just telling jokes. It was about everything about him. And again, when I speak on talent and character, he's like the poster child for me. one of the reasons is, out of all of the comedians that I dealt with on Def Comedy Jam, Cedric is the only one that's still riding with his team from day one. All right? Eric Rohn, his manager, was his manager when I put him on Def Comedy Jam. I can't say that for anyone else. So that just shows me who Cedric is, you know? And I also watched Cedric. Once Cedric, Cedric came on Def Comedy Jam. Steve Harvey was on Def Comedy Jam. Stan Lathan was the director of Def Comedy Jam. What happened off of Def Comedy Jam? The Steve Harvey Show. So when you're talking about going back to stealing an idea, that was Stan's show. You know what I mean? So don't come at the comedian for that. But at the same time, you see what the show did for Steve? Because Steve had a show before that didn't go nowhere. You know what I mean? Called Me and the Boys. But now Stan's genius saw these two guys on Def Comedy Jam and pulled them together, no different than Martin saw Tracy Morgan where? On Def Comedy Jam, and what happened? Hustle Man was on Martin. Yeah. It was an incubator for a lot of good stuff. And that's why I felt like it should have continued, but maybe it needed to chill for a minute like it did. And then when I came back with the show in the 2000s, it introduced the world to Damon Wayans Jr. Nobody knew Damon Wayans Jr. was doing comedy because he went by the name of Kyle Green at the time. And I told him, you got to change your name, man. You got to wear your family's name, And that's when he called himself Damon Jr. And I could tell you this, after he killed, and I've seen people steal his Def Jam jokes, right? But after Damon Jr. did Def Comedy Jam, Damon Sr. walked over to me, man, pulled me over to the side, and he said, "Thanks, B." And I said, "What?" He said, "Because he did it, not me." You know what I'm saying? Because now when you see what people saying about, Bronny and LeBron and stuff, everybody always think that, the little one didn't earn it. The little one be earning it, but everybody else be trying to make something out of it. But that Damon Wayans Jr. shot from there. Think about what I'm saying. And it happened with a lot of other guys, who, when they finally got that opportunity to hit that stage, it happened. It happened with this comedian Capone. Nobody knew who Capone was. He killed Def Comedy Jam. Even Tiffany, people was trying to figure out why would I put Tiffany on there? Because Tiffany had enough material that I could put her on stage and she could showcase. Def Comedy Jam was nothing more than a 7-minute showcase that got cut down to your best 4 or 5 minutes at most. You know what I mean? And it's just one of those things, and that's why I wanted to continue right now with what I have going on with the Legacy Entertainment Group, man. We making this thing happen again.
Definitely. But just curious, right? Something just came to mind. With all the comedians you put on, have any of them reached back to help you or no?
No, I don't need no one to reach out to help. You know what I mean? I just like to know that I help.
Not help, but show love.
Help. Oh yeah, I mean Chris Tucker calls, Mike Epps. Let me tell you something. I have to tell you this story about Mike Epps. Okay, Bill Bellamy, Mike Epps, Guy Torrey, Joe, all these guys, for the most part, they're good. I was producing a series for Alonzo Mourning for his charity, and I would call comedians and they would come through. But I don't really, because there's so many others. It's so much talent out here. But Mike Epps, man, is again, when you ask me, do any of them reach out, this, that, and the other? Mike Epps is one that Reggie and I, my nephew and I, we gave a community cookout one time. And Mike Epps just came and hung out with my hood. You know what I mean? It was like so dope. And this is right before, or right after next Friday, when he day, you know, right around that time, right? But prior to all of that, you know, and I kind of like, Mike knew that he was family with us, you know, and still family. But Mike was down on his luck one time, okay? And, you know, a lot of comedians, they kind of live from show to show, you know? So at this particular time, Mike, you know, needed some dough. So I said to Mike, I said, listen, man, all you need to do is get $1, right? I said, get $1 and come over to Jersey, catch the path, and I'll be in front of Penn Station and I'll, you know, give you a little something, right? So Mike comes over to my truck and I give him $150, right? This should help him until, this might have been on a Wednesday, right? Might have been on a Wednesday, could have been a Tuesday, but take this money and do what you have to do until your gig on Friday or whatever, right? I went on about my business, not even looking for anything in return. All right, Mike go on about his business. Fast forward, after Mike gets next Friday, this, that, and the other, and now he's in LA and he's doing quite well, obviously. I'm at the Comedy Store and Mike hears that I'm there, right? Mike comes over to me and he pounds me, right? Know what it was? Know what it was? I had given Mike $150 however many years ago it was. Mike put $300 in my hand in some bud. That's my dude. That's my dude. He said, I'll never forget. I'll never forget. You know? And that's what I mean again. Character and talent. You hear me? He's a solid dude, man. Solid dude. You know? Solid dude. And this is after taking Mike to his first premiere. Money Talks. I took Mike to premiere. Mike was late because he went to the Beverly Center to try to get something to wear, right? So now you can't go into the premiere after it done started, right? Mike was going off at the door. Like, who is this guy with you, Bob? Everybody, they went inside to get Chris to come outside to chill us. And this is before Mike became anybody. And now he's like the toast of Hollywood. It's a beautiful story.
Right. Yeah, that's dope, man. Chris Tucker.
Chris Tucker, man. Again, Chris is someone that is just a real one with me. You know what I mean? People could say what they want, but I know that he keeps it real. And one of the reasons I know he keeps it real is because he still calls me. You know what I mean? Just to check on me, see how I was doing. But I never forget the night that I laid my eyes on Chris Tucker. I was getting ready to do a new season of Def Comedy Jam. And a lot of the comedians that I would select would either come out to the Peppermint, you know, just like comedians could come out to my room in Willingboro now to get to the Apollo. I had comedians would come in, you know, to the Peppermint, and I would make my decisions on, you know, if I'm gonna use them for the next season or whatever. But I would also go out to the Bay Area. A good friend of mine, Tony Spires, used to produce this, the Bay Area Black Comedy Competition. And it would be like, they would select 60 comedians to perform over a 3-day period, with the top 20, like it would be 20, 20, 20, and the top 7 from each night would move into the next round. So since I was asked to judge on like Saturday night, but it started on like a Thursday night or Friday, whatever, however it went. I wasn't a judge for 2 of the 3 nights. So on one of the nights, I'm watching the 20 comedians, and it's very impressive because the comedians are from all over the country. So this one particular night, I'm watching this comedian slam. He was like my favorite comedian of the night, of the 20. So at the end, they all walk back out on the stage, and they do the Kiki Shepherd, putting the hand out, this and the audience clap and stuff, right? So when they call your name, you walk to you step out, and you're one of the 7. So I know who I loved, but he didn't step out yet. So now they was up to 5, and I'm saying to myself, now he got to be one of the 2. And he wasn't. So I'm in the Bay Area, so I'm like, man, let me run backstage and catch this dude before he go jump off the Golden Gate. You know what I mean? Because he really deserved to be in this joint. And I walked up to him and I said, I really enjoyed you, man. My name is Bob Sumner from Def Comedy Jam, and I want to use you for the next season. I know you didn't place to move into the next round of 21. It's 777. So the next round, you're not even there, but I got you. And the next thing I know, he was Smokey and Friday. It was Chris Tucker, and I never really even knew how Chris got Friday until I saw an interview that Cube was doing. And Cube said that all of the people that they was bringing in for the Smokey role, he wasn't feeling. And he remembered seeing this guy on Def Comedy Jam named Chris Tucker. And that became Smokey. And it's like, that's why I say what I say when it's like, I want you to become a film or TV star when I put you on my stage. I just don't want you in there just telling jokey jokes.
Why you think Chris Tucker won't do another Friday?
He may do it if the money's right. I mean, again, he did the first Friday for scale, and then the second Friday they offered him like $1 million, but made however many, I mean, again, Chris is someone too who Chris never had an agent, or he just dealt with him and Tracy, his lawyer. I don't know if Tracy's still his lawyer, but Chris handled his business in a way where he did it his way. He wasn't beat just to try to put some food on the table. He's a smart man, very smart.
I mean, with all the success he had, he gotta be. But how you feel about comedians wearing dresses? Because I know they get a lot of, pushback and backlash for doing that. How you feel about that?
When my opinion on comedians wearing dresses and all of that, they should have asked Flip Wilson that. You know what I'm saying? They should have asked Milton Berle that. It's nothing new about that. It's like all of a sudden people want to talk about it like I mean, that's on you. It ain't like it's on you. I mean, you're acting. I mean, what's his name? Who was it? Dustin Hoffman? You know what I mean? All them guys, I mean, they got paid doing it. It ain't like, it doesn't take away from your masculinity if you trying to get your son through college. I mean, I don't have one way or the other to say. When I hear people go off on people who do certain type of things, I mean, even when they used to talk about don't watch Def Comedy Jam, because of the vulgarity and this, that, and the other. Comedians was doing their club act on TV, but you don't have to watch it. If it's things that you don't care for, just don't go down that street. I mean, I mean, again, I can't speak for what someone else is doing or not doing. Yeah.
That's real talk. Martin, we spoke about him earlier, but any stories about him?
Well, I mean, The thing that sticks out for me, for Martin, seriously, and it ain't nothing, no more than this. After that first season of Def Comedy Jam, when the season was actually kind of extended, it was an extended season because we didn't even like air everything until we did more shows, okay? And Martin did it. Now, it was time to do the next season, and Martin had the Martin Show going. Hey man, I thank Martin so much for making my job easier, for coming back to do it, because it's hard to shoot a sitcom and then turn right around and try to shoot 12 episodes of Def Comedy Jam. And he was like really, really tired, man. He was really tired. And I just thank him because he was a hard act to follow, man, as you saw. You know what I'm saying? He was a hard act to follow. So it was like we had to like really go to the drawing board to figure out how can you replace such a phenomenal act, you know, because even when you think about him, it was like, as good as the show was, you could have watched Martin by himself every week. You know what I mean? He really, really kicked ass. And just to think, what if Robin would have hosted? Would Martin Lawrence be Martin Lawrence? Think about that part. So what I really want to say is it was nothing but love with him, you know. And even I beg to differ when they talk about the Martin stealing characters and all that type of stuff. I mean, again, you have a lot of people that do a lot of the same stuff, you know, so it's not like one person got dibs on stuff, you know. So I know that a lot of people have tried to point fingers at him about certain things, but at the end of the day, man, he made it happen. So there you go.
Yeah, yeah, he did. But to your point, how you feel about some of the things that people point fingers at him about?
I just feel like, you know, I just don't like to bring up, oh, when they be talking about stuff that happened 99 years ago. You know, it's like, it's okay for the conversation, but at the same time, we have to learn how to get past some things, especially in some things that you don't have, like, you ain't write a contract where you own it, you know? If you, even when I look at like Def Comedy Jam, all these comedy jams that people say, you know, this comedy jam, that comedy jam, this comedy jam. We never knew that comedy jam. If we knew that comedy jam was going to be used that much, we would have just got a trademark on it. Because the way that name came up, how we came up with the name, was nothing more than us being in a conference room. You remember when you watched the Chappelle show and they did the thing about the N-word, 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 you know, around the thing, and then they come up with the name? That's how Def Comedy Jam came up. Def Comedy Jam was, we were in a conference room having a meeting about, you know, what the show was going to be, this, that, and the other. And then we had to say, what are we going to call it? What are we going to call it? Nobody knew what we were going to call it. And in our conference room, there were plaques, platinum plaques on all of the walls. So Russell leans back in his chair. He leans back and hits the back of the chair, hits the wall, and the platinum plaque fell onto the floor. I can't make this up. The platinum plaque fell onto the floor. Russell picks up the plaque, right? And he looks at it, and it's Def Jam Recordings is on the label. And he goes, Def Comedy Jam. And everybody looks at each other, and we go, that's it. That's it. And that was it. Def Comedy Jam.
Wow. And I was wondering how that name came about too. So yeah, that's crazy, man. I didn't know that. Monique, how was she like?
I love Mo. I love Mo for all that I know of Mo. And I say that because she's a straight shooter. And I learned that in a way that this is one of my favorite stories, okay? First of all, Monique had a comedy club. Steve Harvey had a comedy club. Monique had a comedy club. And it always baffled me that they had comedy clubs before they became famous. You know what I mean? Where they could have had them now and had them all over the country. You know what I mean? But that didn't happen. That didn't happen. But this did happen. We taped Def Comedy Jam one season while I had the tour out. So Monique was on the tour, right? But they all came off the tour so we could go shoot. So we shot the season, and then we went back into the tour. But before that, we were in editing. Stan and I were in editing, and we're looking at all of the shows and everybody. So Monique set, and we were trying to get away from certain type of material. So Monique's set didn't go as well as we thought it should. So we decided that we're going to keep her on tour, but bring her back to shoot the next season, okay? So with that being said, she was married, I guess it was her first husband, right? At the show, we was playing the Universal Amphitheater in LA. So I wanted to let Monique know gently that, and I told you that we would tape 60 comedians and only show 48. So she was going to be one of the 12 that we wasn't going to show. But I'm going to keep on the tour, and I'm going to bring her back for the shoot the next season when we tape again. So I'm having this conversation with her then husband a couple minutes before showtime, okay? Not thinking that he's going to go back and tell her, okay? Don't tell her now. Tell him when we get back to the hotel, whatever. I shouldn't have told him. Make a long story short, here comes Monique bolting out of her dressing room. I mean, steaming, right? What do you mean you're not going to use my set? And I'm like, Mo, it was too much of what we're trying to get away from, right? But it's cool for the tour. So I'm still going to keep you here, right? So she performs that night, bruh. She kills it, right? This is on a Saturday night. I get a call from the office, Donna Shavu. I never forget. Donna called the office. Called me in my office. I'm back on the East Coast now, right? And she wants to know if the young lady that performed the other night is still around in town. I'm like, nah, I'm back in Jersey. This, that, and the other. She's in Baltimore. This, that, and the other. I'm like, what's going on? They said, well, do you know how we could get in touch with her? I said, of course, right? I said, what's happening? Know what she says? She says, she, she says, she says that the producers of Moesha was at the show and they saw her perform and they're looking to do a spinoff with Countess Vaughn from Moesha. That's how Nikki Parker was born, son. That was the beginning of the Parkers. So from her going nuts on me, but me keeping her on the show, because I could have told her the way she went off, I could have said, well, you ain't just going to perform tonight. I could have did that. But nah. And then I looked at her husband at the time, and he looked at me like, and I'm like, whatever. But you see what it turned out to be? Her life changed that night, fam. And again, taking you from the outhouse to the penthouse. That's what we do. What a story, huh?
A hell of a story. But Aries, how was it like working with him? He was on Def Comedy Jail.
Aries started with me when he was 14 years old. His mother used to play in the jazz club that I used to book, comedy and jazz. And one night, her name's Doris. Doris said to me that her son does comedy and she would like for him to come, to my open mics and stuff. And I said, as long as you accompany him, it's all good. And I put Aries on. And I was so impressed, man, with his impressions and stuff at 14, So a couple years later, I had the opportunity to put Def Comedy Jam together. And I put Aries on as soon as he got his working papers at 16, And he never looked back. Aries never looked back from 16. And sometimes I think maybe it happened too soon for him. And that's where, a lot of people spoke on his arrogance and stuff like that. I'm like, he been around for a very long time, so he gonna be whatever he is. And plus, when you from around this way, you ain't letting nobody just like pull nothing over your head, either, your eyes, So Aries seems to have been like kind of toning it down a little bit from what I've been seeing though. He doesn't seem as angry as he was. He was making me feel like he might have been a little angry, even though I appreciate every time he gets a opportunity, he definitely, give me props for helping him, come along. So I appreciate that. A couple of other ones could do that, but it's okay when they don't.
Do you think he got to his full potential?
Well, again, I think that a lot of people can't handle how Aries just present himself. He has a real, effort attitude a lot of times, and some people can't handle that. But I kind of know where it comes from, because I watched him grow up. But he's very, very talented. And when you think about, the success that Mad TV had, he had a lot to do with that. And then, he was in some pretty good movies at one time too. I mean, everybody watched him in Jerry Maguire. You know what I mean? So who knows? I mean, he could get it back to where I think it is coming back for him. I really do, because he's still a youngin'.
Dave Chappelle.
It's not much I could say about rock stars. He developed into a rock star. And the truth of the matter is he's very much who he was when I met him at, like, I guess Dave might have been 17, 18. That's why it was so funny when we did the Netflix special and Dave said that I passed on him like 3 times. Some people would actually come up to me and say, you really passed on Chappelle 3 times? I'm like, that was just a joke. You know what I mean? That was just a joke. But for me, Dave was always smart. He was always aware of what was going on. And he also knew that he needed stage time whenever he could get it. And I say that because there was one particular night at Caroline's. I used to, before Hot 97 and all them used to do comedy shows at Caroline's, I would do like shows there after the All-Star game had come to Madison Square Garden, and Charles Oakley and I did a comedy show. And Oak and I would do comedy shows every All-Star weekend, whatever city it was going to be. This is before, everything got real, popular. And from the time that I did the comedy show at the Carolines, I started doing a regular weekly show. And then after that, like I said, Hot 97, Wendy Williams, Ed Love and them started doing them. But this particular night, one of my comedians was stuck in traffic, and there was a comedian there who I asked to do this, could he fill in? And the comedian had just got he had just got on TV, had a show and stuff, and he kind of like sunned me, you know what I mean? He kind of like, nah, man, this, that, and the other, right? I never will forget this. And I'm like, damn, this is the same dude that I kind of like helped put on, but it don't make a difference because we'll get past it. No sooner than he told me that, here comes Dave Chappelle. And Dave goes, Bob, could I get some minutes tonight? And I just told my man, I said, all right, man, don't worry about it. Dave got you. Dave's going to do it. And it was just who Dave is. Dave, any stage on the come up Dave could get on, he would, and the rest is history. And there was times when I would even have tour shows that I would try to put Dave on, but they would want somebody like a Shucky Ducky or somebody, because they was used to, it's a thing of comics, and then there's another thing of comedians, comedians who are, all about the art and know how to do numerous specials and make specials special. That's Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle been Dave Chappelle from day one. The only difference in Dave Chappelle on day one and today is he's lived. So he has more to talk about, but he's the ultimate when it comes to having a point of view. Of course, you know that already.
So what's the crowd feeling him back then as a comedian?
Who Dave? Was people feeling him?
Yeah, because I always heard that the black crowds didn't understand his comedy back then.
It's no, because they wasn't understanding what real comedy was about. Real comedy is having a point of view and hearing somebody tell their story. Not just up there, doing backflips and stuff like that. I mean, you have people that can't get on stage unless they play their song and all that. That's not what it's all about. It's about being able to entertain people with stories that they could paint the picture and they could see it be developed into a motion picture. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm so impressed with him. Always been.
And him and Charlie Barnett was real cool, right? I heard Dave Chappelle mentor was Charlie Barnett.
Yeah, I actually was going to mention that when I was speaking on Charlie earlier, that Dave, Dave took a nice page out of Charlie. Dave would come up from DC and he would go to Washington Park and do what Charlie was doing. Just entertaining, working, getting his chops together, and people dropping money in the bucket. Why not? But I believe that Dave at one point was working on maybe doing the Charlie Barnett story, which would make so much sense. He was amazing. Yeah, he was amazing.
Yeah, that would be dope if he get behind that, man. I'd love to see that. Paul Mooney, how was he like?
Paul Mooney is the one that gave me credibility coming up in the 80s. Because I started, my first comedy show was February the 8th, 1985. That's the first time I did a stand-up show with one of my schoolmates, Antoine Twink Mathis. Antoine used to go to all of the comedy clubs in New York, getting online. Chris Rock and all of them used to be there trying to get on. And it put me into the world to see, what all of this was all about. And so once I got that bug, I started working with Orpheus Entertainment. This guy, Chuck Brownlee, used to do these shows, and he would always have comedians open up and stuff. So I kept doing this thing, and then it got to a point where I started doing my little comedy shows, and I wanted to do a larger show. And that larger show was with Mr. Paul Mooney. And Paul and I became the best of friends from that moment on. And Paul watched me grow. Paul was years before I started working at Def Jam Records, maybe like 4 or 5 years. And he was always there for me. So when I was able to put Paul Mooney on Def Comedy Jam, that was like mind blowing for both of us, because again, he's a great man. I speak like he's right here, right now. He's definitely somebody that was there for me when I was on the come up. And what he did for Rich. As he was one of Rich's main writers, along with David Banks is somebody else that someone needs to recognize at some point, because they kept Rich right.
Eddie Griffin.
First time I saw Eddie Griffin, I had heard about him, but I heard about him. I was coming to LA, and it wasn't like I was going to see Eddie at the Comedy Act Theater, because Eddie was already Mr. Sunset Boulevard. Fast Eddie is what they called him. And I went inside the Comedy Store and watched one of the most amazing performances I ever saw in my life. And of course, I called Stan immediately and said, Eddie Griffin is at the top of the list. And next thing you know, he's on Def Comedy Jam doing Michael Jackson, smoking the pipe. And that was like, the rest was history. You know what I'm saying? He got a nice little jump start from that performance on Def Jam. Eddie Griffin is definitely one of the Def Comedy Jam Hall of Famers.
A hell of a comedian, man. But when it comes to Eddie Griffin, you got any stories about him or no?
I don't really have, well, yeah. Yeah. Only the reason I have this story is because Eddie was determined to finish his last joke. Okay? We're playing the theater at Madison Square Garden, right? And my road manager at the time, Lee Stallman, great guy. He was a stickler on the time because, Madison Square Garden is a union house, and we're not trying to go into overtime, right? So Eddie got to get off stage, all right? But Eddie got to tell his joke, right? And as Eddie's telling this last joke, and you can see the curtain is coming down. It's one of them electric curtains, right? And as he's coming, and we're like, the curtain is gonna hit Eddie, because Eddie's not leaving, and Eddie knows that it's coming. So Eddie looks up, and as the curtain's coming down, Eddie's finishing the joke, but he's squatting, he's squatting all the way to Eddie was laying down, the curtain closed. That was hilarious, man. You had to be there, because it was like, he could have ended 2 minutes before that. You don't have to get to your last joke, but he just was determined to end that joke, and he almost got cut by a curtain. For real. Yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious, man. What about Kevin Hart?
Oh man, Kevin Hart. It's interesting that you mentioned Kevin, because my son went to see him last night. He was over at the over here at the Prudential Arena in Newark. Kevin's story go a lot of different ways. And the thing about Kev is always been a go-getter. And I remember vividly when I met him. And he came into this room, and I was with Lee. My road manager. At the time, Def Comedy Jam wasn't on the air. We wasn't on HBO at the time. Chris Rock show was on. But we was still on tour. We had a deal with Bud Light. So every city that we went to, the comedian would win a fat farm. We had Fat Farm, Baby Fat at the time. So the comedian would win a Fat Farm leatherless Def Comedy Jam tour jacket, and they'll win some money and an opportunity to open up for the tour that came to that city. And we've had some great comedians win. The late Roz G had won. The late Todd Lynn had won. Coca Brown had won. D. Ray Davis had won. And in Philadelphia, this kid named Kev the Bastard had come in there, and you could see that he had something. Like, this kid was awesome. And in Kev's book, he talks about the night that he won the competition. And he goes on to say that he had this opportunity to open up for the Def Comedy Jam tour. But what Kev failed to realize was he was going to open up the show, but the curtains were going to be closed, because the curtain didn't open until you saw Kid Capri. And that's what kicked everything off. So Kev said that he was telling everybody he was going to be on the show. And next thing you know, he's on here. He's on the show, but he's not on it like he wanted to be. But he went over on the side once the show started. And I believe I had J. Anthony Brown, Bruce, maybe Earthquake, and I forget maybe Cheryl Underwood, somebody. But he said that that's where he really learned what this thing was really all about. And I just thought that was so cool, because what has happened with Kev's career, again, it happened because not only is he talented, but he has great character, man. And I love the fact that he's been able to bring his guys up with him. You know what I mean? He keeps them right there. They help him with his writing and everything. And he's just a class act. Now, did I know he was going to become a damn near a billionaire? Hey, who knew? Who saw that? But at the same time, it couldn't happen to a better guy. Yeah. And it's crazy though, when I tell that story about Kev in the curtain, the same thing happened with I don't know if you're familiar with Joe Coy.
He does sound familiar.
Joe Coy is he's very popular. Yeah, Coy is very popular now. I mean, selling out theaters. I mean, not theaters, arenas. But the first time I met Joe, and he tells this story, Honest John, one of my comedians on the tour, we were in Vegas, and Honest John brings Joe in and asked me if Joe can do some minutes opening up the show. And I said, of course. And I put Joe on, and Joe went through the same thing. Curtain's going to be closed until Kid Capri come on. But the beauty of it is his performance was so dope. I had Rudy Rush on the show, who was then the host of Showtime at the Apollo, and he got Joe over to the Apollo, and you see, the rest is history for Joe. So it's always, when your character's right, you never know what's going to happen. But when you're acting kind of busted, you're likely to never make it. But then again, your jump shot might finally come, you know?
Yeah, but I gotta ask you, what was the backstory behind Bernie Mac yelling out, "I ain't scared of you, motherfuckers"?
You know, there's so many stories about when Bernie Mac did the "I ain't scared of you, motherfuckers," and there's only one real story, and I'm gonna give it to you. This was Bernie's second time on Def Comedy Jam. Now, the first time, everybody remembered "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," "Stir It Like Coffee," you know, all that. Bernie killed it. So, of course, everybody want to see Bernie again, but nobody knows at the taping when they're going to see him, okay? Because we taping 12 shows during that week. And if you're lucky enough to be there for the Bernie Mac show, God bless you, all right? So, it was some people that was lucky enough to be there for the Bernie Mac show. So, this is how it goes. Whenever I'm lining up the shows, at this particular time, I'm taping 5 comedians per show because you never know who's going to tank. Okay? So it's very important that I know that my first comedian is going to kill, and I know that my last comedian is going to kill. Number 2, 3, and 4, I kind of not know what's going to happen. In all my shows, I make sure that I'm going to have a woman on the show to represent. I see a lot of shows where it's all men, and I'm like, it's all women in the audience and nobody on stage to speak for them. So that's how my show goes. So this particular show, I have the top, the bottom, the woman, and then, you know, 2 other comedians. Now, again, if you all do well, you all make the cut and somebody might get cut out of another show. You know how editing works. So this particular show, the number 2, the comedian that went on first, killed. The second comedian flat out was terrible. All right. Now, again, I don't know if they're going to bring what I saw at the audition, or if they're going to come in and just be flat or not ready. Who knows what happened to them this morning? All right. So make a long story short, this comedian didn't do well. Then the next 2 comedians, they did well. Okay. Now, nobody is even thinking about this comedian who went second. Okay. Now it's the Bernie Mac show. Bernie Mac comes on stage, and now everybody's happy that they are at the Bernie Mac show because they remember him from last season, right? So people are just like going crazy because it's Bernie Mac, and Bernie just looks at the audience and just goes, "Y'all don't understand. I ain't scared of you motherfuckers." And when he said that, everybody, it was like a callback from that dude. Everybody remembered how that moment was. It was really a crazy moment, you know? So when Bernie said that, him and Kid Capri, you must know that Bernie Mac had been the host of my tour for the entire year. So him and Kid Capri had a thing going on. So when Bernie looked at the audience, he said a quick one-liner, and then Kid Capri hit the music, this, that, and the other, and then cut it, boom, boom, boom. It was just like magical. You saw it, you know? But it all really came. It was something as simple as that turned into a Hall of Fame moment, you know? And that's why I always say, you know, Bernie and I, you know, had this relationship that when it was time to have a new host for Def Comedy Jam, I thought it should have been Bernie because he had been hosting the tour for so long and did such a great job. And Bernie was, I was the only person that Bernie could go off on, even though he knew he wasn't going off on me like I made the decision, but he was like wanting me to hear, like he couldn't understand why he wasn't the host. And if you notice, Bernie never came back. Check that out.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. So that's the backstory behind that. Somebody wanted me to ask you about a comedian, Amazing Grace. You know her?
Amazing Grace? I didn't even know that people remembered Amazing Grace. And I'm happy that they do, because Amazing Grace was a cross-dresser. Like Flame Monroe, you know that comedian Flame Monroe? Amazing Grace was prior to that, actually. And Amazing Grace was funny as hell, but I believe Amazing Grace passed away.
Yeah, she did pass away.
Yeah, but Amazing Grace was funny, but Amazing Grace passed away like years ago, not long after she did Def Comedy Jam.
Yeah, you're right. Not too long after that.
And I never really quite knew who Amazing Grace was. Like, was Amazing Grace, what was Amazing Grace?
I know her real name was Corey.
Oh, Corwin Hawkins. No, not something Hawkins. Corwin Hawkins? Corwin Hawkins. Yeah, Amazing Grace was cool as hell, yo. Damn. Yo, I'm tripping that somebody would ask about, because that's somebody that nobody ever really mentions. And Amazing Grace would have been a superstar today. I'm here to tell you. I saw Amazing Grace at Steve Harvey's room, I believe, in Dallas. And that's where, you know who used to do my flight information and hotel information at Steve Harvey's room?
Who's that?
This young lady who used to tell me that she could sing and stuff. And one night I was there and she got up on stage and was killing it, right? And I'm like, damn. And then I'm watching BET and Big Les is interviewing her. And I'm like, wait a minute. No, that ain't Erica. It was Erica Wright, now known as Erykah Badu. Yeah, Erica was dope. And she used to work at Steve Harvey's Comedy Club.
If you don't mind me asking, how did she die?
Who, Corwin?
Yeah, Corey Hawkins.
I was thinking it might have been AIDS. It might have been, but don't quote me on that. But I'm kind of thinking that might have been, you know. Boy, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I heard she died of AIDS, but I think the reason why people know who she is because she was in that movie Low Down Dirty Shame, the one with Jada Pinkett.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. And that kind of came right around that time. So I don't know if Corwin got that because of they saw her on Def Jam or not. You know, that could have happened because it was around that time.
Yep, that's pretty much how people know her. Tracy Morgan, how was he like?
What can I say about Tracy? Tracy Morgan, I recently saw Tracy down in Atlantic City. And Tracy had asked me, you know, what was it about him that I was attracted to. Tracy Morgan, there's only one Tracy Morgan. You know what I'm saying? He was just his own person. You know what I mean? And it led him to getting that role of Martin, which led him to, becoming, who he became on Saturday Night Live and everything else. But again, with him and me, it was all about his not just being talented, but his character. he was one that would come out here to my rooms in Jersey just to hang out. You know what I mean? And, I'm talking about after he became Tracy Morgan. And I really love that when like you ask me, do some of these guys, do they holler? Yes, they do. The real ones do, you know?
Yes, indeed. Great interview, man. Great interview. Very informative. Yeah, we got to run this back again, man. I can't wait for the people to see it.
You cool with that? All right, man. Again, it's Poop hit me and said what he said, and here I am, man. You know, and again, like I said, it's like I started in Hollywood, I went to Hollywood, and I'm doing this interview in Hollywood. You know why? Because Hollywood is good. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, we got to run this back, man. But before we end the interview, let the people know what you got going on.
Well, I have like a whole lot happening right now. Of course, I'm Bob.Sumner on Instagram, and you could keep up with everything that I'm doing. But, right now, I got my crew. We doing these outdoor concerts for the summer. We like to call it hot fun in the Sumner time. You know what I'm saying? So we got that popping, as well as, I'm trying to put together this tour. I'm trying to put this for a tour, and we're building it. It ain't no big tour. We want to go into comedy clubs. You know what I mean? We want to stretch it out, and so people can see that we exist. And you do one night, then you turn it into 2 nights, then you come back. So that's really where I'm at right now. I'm really trying to I'm really trying to get back to where we were. I'm really trying to get back because I know it can happen. And we have the festival. I have the softball game for American Cancer Society in memory of my dad and my high school and Little League teammate. They both passed away from pancreatic cancer. And I just feel like it's in me to keep their names alive. You know what I mean? And my dad was something special. Like I said, he built a legacy here with my nephew and my brother, and I just want to keep doing what I'm doing, because I'm gonna be straight up with you. Back in the day, and I always talk about sports, and back in the day, everybody was wondering, could there ever be another Dr. J? And then here comes Michael Jordan, and then here comes Shaq, and here comes Kobe, and now you have LeBron and off to Steph. What makes you think it can't happen in comedy too? It's the same type of thing. So when, you had Pryor, and then you had Eddie, and then you keep it moving into the kings of comedy, this, that, and the other, queens of comedy, Kevin Hart. Then everybody seemed like they forgot. So that's why I'm here, to help you remember that there will always be the next one if you just give them an opportunity. And that's why I'm happy to be on this platform with you, my brother. And I thank you for having me here, because, again, I'm watching all my comedians speak, some of them speaking for me. Let me speak for me. You know what I mean? Let me tell the story. And there's definitely a part 2. You know what I mean? There's a part 3, because it's you see that long ass list of stuff. There's a lot to talk about, and we'll get to it, because I have to at some point. We don't have to do it right now, but I gotta talk about Deion Cole, okay? Because he's talking about a success story, big time. You heard me? Give a shout out to Slugger, my whole crew, Pookie, KG, Vin Rock, you know what I'm saying? The treacherous one, that whole, we all family, man, Thanks for having me, bruh.